Hey, I am back. I am so ready to talk to all of you. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Welcome to Happy Hour with Dr. Lisa. I am your host. Of course, you know who I am. I'm Dr. Lisa. Thank you for joining me on Podbean Live, on Facebook Live, on Instagram Live. And I am recording myself for TikTok and all of those other social media platforms as well. I'm so excited. I hope you can hear it in my voice. If you see me, wave hi to me. If you like to join me live on air, you can absolutely do that as well. I am here. I am rested. I ask for prayers. Those of you who know me personally know I absolutely believe in prayer, and prayer works. Definitely works for me. I'm feeling so much better. Still a little exhausted, still recovering from a lot of things that I have to do within my personal life, but I'll tell you, you got to take some time out for yourself sometimes. I did that. I cut a couple of things out that I was doing so much. God, volunteering my time, working full time, being a mother, being a wife, helping people, talking to all of you, writing blogs, writing 2 different blogs. Most of you know by now I'm also an online contributor for Psychology Today, the magazine, the big one. So between all this writing and the podcast and volunteering my time, I was tired. So I took off last week. I will let you all know if I decide to do that again. However, I've been receiving your questions. I've been answering them as best as I can in between my time that I was taking for myself. And so I put a couple of them on Facebook. I haven't done a lot of them. I'm starting to catch up from where I left off. But I will have those things done. Keep them coming. If you want to give me a call, you may absolutely do so. 765-205-1959. If you want to keep sending those questions via Gmail, you can do that. kidscansee@gmail.com. You can also reach me on all social media platforms. So let's do it. I'm on Instagram @kidscansee. Can you? So keep contacting me. Stop spamming me, but keep contacting me. So it's been an interesting 2 weeks for me. Last week, I wrote a blog all about failure. So make sure you read that. Sometimes we need a refresher and a reminder that sometimes things just don't work out. It doesn't mean that we're incompetent. It doesn't mean that we are not successful. It certainly doesn't mean that we are less intelligent than other people. I had to remind myself of that too. It's just sometimes we fail, and I've failed plenty of times. And because I've seen so many people lately discuss disparities here and there for different things, I decided, you know what? I am going to talk exclusively about failure. Sometimes we don't realize we have to fail to learn and learn how to do things differently. I just heard a weird noise in my house, so I got quiet for a minute. I didn't know what it was. Didn't want it to be in my podcast, but I think it was. And also, for some reason, the music wasn't playing right at all in the beginning of this podcast. So just a couple of little weird things happening, but we're going to still keep rolling with this. So listen. Believe it or not, I've gotten a lot of questions about serial killers. Now, that is not a specialty of mine, not at all. We don't really deal with conditions that are outside of our area of expertise. When it comes to serial killers, you have to have some expertise, excuse me, in certain psychiatric disorders, and I don't necessarily deal with those. I deal with them a little differently on the kids side of things. So I want you to keep that in mind. Now, when I talk about this question 20, I've gotten this question a couple of times. And when I put it on social media, it kind of shocked people. I mean, some of you were kind of replying and writing me going, hey, what are you doing talking about serial killers? Well, you all know psychologists have to deal with that kind of stuff, right? This is not new. We have to deal with different behaviors, and we research them. And, you know, some psychologists are forensic psychologists, and they go to court and they deal with these things. They're expert witnesses, you know, and this is a question that caught me off guard a couple of times within the last year from parents. However, I do understand why they would have those concerns. So I'm going to tell you why before we start talking about the blog. Many of these kids are violent. Yes, we can diagnose these conditions pending the symptoms and the criterion, if they meet the criterion, for example. So, these were a couple of parents who were concerned because of the amount of violence that these kids had. And so basically the question was, well, Dr. Lisa, am I raising a serial killer? So I heard it once, right? Heard it once. And then I heard it again from another parent. And I thought, what is happening here? Why are these parents thinking that, you know, this is something that they should even think about? Then I heard it again from a totally different parent. And I thought, you know, with the last parent, I said, do you think this is something I should write about? Would you like me to address this? Because I've heard this at least twice now. Parents said, yeah, I think it would be a good topic. Go ahead and write it because I want to know if I'm contributing to my kid being a serial killer in the future. Started doing my homework, started researching. I don't just write blogs based upon topics this heavy without doing my homework on them. That's what we're supposed to do. You know, future psychologists, we have to be responsible for what we put out in the public. So I started reading a little bit more about it. I have some experiences in this area, in particular with certain disorders that kind of correlate with it that we see in kids. So I thought, okay, let's do it. So we're going to talk about it. Am I raising a serial killer? This is part one. We're going to break this down into 3 different parts because there are, in my opinion, 3 different responsibilities that correlate with this question. So we're going to talk about the mother. We are going to talk about the father. We are also going to talk to these kids. These kids, you guys, some of you listen to me. You're making some choices. Yes, you are. You have to be responsible and realize what you're doing. You all are making some choices that also contribute to your parents. Some of your parents thinking, what is happening? Am I raising a serial killer? So when you get to the blog and you see it, you absolutely read it correctly. Mothers in particular want to know. Mothers have traditionally been associated with creating serial killers or the making of a serial killer. Why would I say that? Because it's true, for one, and two, when we think about all of the movies that we have seen about serial killers, and if we go back in time and we talk about what happened in those movies and who are the victims of some of these crimes, well, we see women, right? Mm-hmm. When we see mothers who have severely abused these kids. So this is why people will target the mother. However, the mothers aren't always the primary targets, right? And so that's why we needed to break this up into 3 different parts. Now, let's talk about how mothers parent their children and how it can contribute. Mothers of serial killers have been historically cruel to their children. And I'm not talking about cruelness in the sense of physical abuse. We all know that's cruel. I am talking about some of the most horrendous acts that you could think about within your mind in relation to how they treat their children. They're brutal toward them, they're hostile toward them, they're cruel, they're physically abusive, they are emotionally abusive, they are verbally abusive. You take all of that, and actual serial killers, if you examine some of the things that they even believe that contributed to their crime spree, they will talk about the mother. There are countless articles, if you get bored, look into it, that talk about the personalities and characteristics of mothers of serial killers. We're going to discuss mothers in terms of the type of parenting that they are contributing or giving to their children. When you read articles about this stuff, it does talk about these aggressive behaviors do not start when they are adults. So let's just stop right there. I've talked about discipline. I've talked about love. I've discussed parenting numerous times on this podcast and on my blog. You all definitely have to read those things if you are a parent to understand some of the things that you are able to improve upon if some of those things apply to you. Now, what I say time and time again is that these behaviors do not start when these kids are 21. I'll give you a couple examples. Sometimes when I am observing the behaviors of children, they are attacking their parents. Parents are sitting there and accepting it. Sometimes they are verbally abusive toward their parents. Parents sit there, they don't do anything about it. Sometimes these kids are throwing things at their parents from across the room. They're not doing anything about it. And it's not just kids. A lot of you know that I work with kids that have disabilities. And a lot of these kids do not have disabilities. So these are kids who also go to school and they are aggressive. Think about the little boy that shot his teacher. Think about that. Now, this is a kid who had concerns for a very long time, and he was 6 years old, right? No one would have ever thought that this 6-year-old would shoot his teacher except somebody like me. Because it's not uncommon. There are signs. The problem is we let these kids get away with it. Oh, he's 6. He's not going to hurt anyone. Oh, he said he's going to bring a gun to school, but he's 6. And we don't take it seriously, right? Right. So those are the kinds of ways that contribute to the behaviors of some of these kids. And if you think about the 6-year-old, it did not start when he was 6. 6-year-olds don't have access to guns. So this is not something that started when he was just 6 years old this year. These aggressive behaviors have been going on and on and on. And listen, I realize some parents just don't know what to do, but there's help out there. Now, we're not going to pretend as if parents don't understand this stuff. You all know when your kids are behaving this way. If you don't know anything else, you ask somebody. And I see parents denying these behaviors repeatedly every day. I'm going, are you kidding me? Your kid just killed a freaking squirrel. And that's not a big deal to you. So this doesn't start when they're adults. When they behave in this manner, you have to seek help. You have to seek help. So there are some maternal behaviors that are associated with the makings of aggressive children. I'm going to skip around a little bit. The number one behavior that I see, which is probably the one that gets under my skin the most, is a passive mother. A passive mother. Hiding problems under the rug, sweeping it away so their kid does not need assistance from people like me, pretending that everything is okay in the world. He was a good boy. He would never hurt anyone. You all know that mother, the one who walks away and doesn't deal with the challenges that she is having with her child. She will protect. He would never hurt anyone. And when I see that on TV, sometimes I go, yeah, right. Let me go back to the 6-year-old again, because this is most recently, in the news. He has severe ADHD. What is that? I don't even know what that means. And I specialize in ADHD. And so he was getting help. Get him different help. These kids sometimes start with low levels of aggression, and they get more aggressive as time goes on. So you can't treat low level or things like verbal aggression the same way you do physical aggression. That child had concerns for a very long time, right? These are the moms who say, they deny the challenges. I've seen it so many times over the course of 30 years in this field. They deny the challenges. They don't deal with them. Not at all. And denial is probably this type of mother's best friend, right? The passive mother, just ignoring it. These mothers also want to maintain a certain image in society, so they are not going to show that there is in fact something to deal with their kids. So that's probably the one that I see the most. I see that one the most, and it's also the one that also gets under my skin, the passive mother. Let's go and let's talk about the hostile mother. This is typically a mom who's been abused herself. She's been abused herself. She transfers that hurt and that pain onto her children, and she mistreats them. A very hostile woman toward her kids. She does not like abuse. She despises it. She couldn't stand her parents abusing her, but she turns into the person that she never wanted to become. She causes trauma. Trauma is the catalyst for a lot of problems that we have in our society. She takes her anger and she's violent, and she traumatizes her children and she makes them suffer. This one is obvious, right? Right? Yeah. I've seen this too, but not as much as the passive mother. This is a woman who really doesn't know how to love her children. She hates everyone. Now, if you turn this into a serial killer, typically this is the mother that they will describe, the one who is hateful. Some of them turn this hate toward their mothers onto other women. So I can call out a couple of serial killers who have done that, but I try not to say their names on purpose. But they they have a lot of crimes toward women. They have killed numerous women, and they tend to be cruel toward women. Very cruel, hating women, targeting women who look very similar to their mothers. So this is the type of mother that these men will typically describe, the hateful mother. All right, let's go on to the umbrella mother. I've talked about helicopter parents, but I have not talked about what I call an umbrella mother. This is a mother whose children have to stay within her watchful eye all the time. She is extremely protective, overly protective of her children. When her children are defiant, she protects them from harm. She protects them from scrutiny. She protects them from oppositional behaviors. She protects them from everything. And if someone tells her, and I've met a couple of umbrella moms like this, when you tell them, oh God, let me just give you a live example. Many years ago, it's probably over 20 years ago at this point, I did meet a kid, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't lie to the public, where I actually said, if she doesn't stop, this kid is gonna harm someone. He just had the makings of it, from what I know about this behavior and these acts. And so for me, it was like, okay, we need to have a different conversation. This mom and um, she would shut this kid off to the environment, to the world. She was not allowing this kid at all to go even out of the house without her. She was 100% sheltering this kid. And so over time, this kid started to display odd behaviors, oppositional behaviors. And it had gotten to a point where the school actually wanted the intervention from a psychologist or where I was working. Okay. And so I was the person that was chosen to work with this family. And she wanted me to quote unquote fix this kid. Yeah. To make a long story short, over time, this kid wound up attacking her. Okay. He attacked her, and gosh, it was actually really sad. It's sad for a couple of reasons, but it was very sad because he grew increasingly aggressive because she was smothering him. This is not, all parents are protective of their kids, but this was different. This was more of a you're not even going around other people. Like, there was at one point she put this kid in the basement, just isolated him where he didn't have anybody to talk to. And that was her way of protecting him. So, of course, when he had the opportunity, he lashed out physically. He actually hurt his mother. You hear about that one, and you can hear about that in correlation with the hostile mother, which from my experience, I have. Not a lot, I have, but more so the hostile mother. So these are three different parenting styles that mothers can have that may contribute to, more aggressive behaviors in children. Now I want you guys to take this seriously, okay? Because I've encountered this a couple of times, okay? I've encountered kids that kill animals. I've encountered kids that harm other kids. I've encountered kids that practice hurting others through hurting animals. I've worked with children who were a part of cults, and they were taught a learned behavior to harm animals as sacrifice. I want you all to take seriously that some of these behaviors are also learned behaviors, but what we need to take very seriously is that when children do want to harm or hurt animals or people, we have and even the elderly, we have a responsibility to do something about it. If you're a mandated reporter, you make sure you report it. There is no if, and, buts, or in between on that. You have a duty to, some of us are mandated reporters, so we don't have a choice, but the rest of you in society, you got to step up and do something about that as well. You can call the police. If you are a parent and you see that your kids are harming other animals, I cannot tell you all how many parents I work with who say, oh, my kid took a book and slammed it into the dog's head. And then they just go on and talk as if that's a part of their presentation, as if it's a part, for example, of their symptoms of autism. Sure, there are some children who lack a certain amount of control. I'm not talking about those kids. I'm talking about the kids that are doing it on purpose. I'm not talking about the kids, for example, that have autism and they may not be aware of their aggressive behaviors. It's totally different when they may be atypical. We can retrain that kind of stuff. I'm discussing the kids who do this because they like it. Those are the kids I'm talking about. The ones who go, it was cool to kill my cat. And everybody go, well, it was just a cat. You see that? Those are the kids that I'm talking about. Now, all of the mothering behaviors that I discussed are abnormal. Even helicopter moms, that's an abnormal behavior. There are a lot of moms who say, oh, yes, I know I'm a protective helicopter mom, as if it's a badge of honor. That's an abnormal way to parent your kid. When you have some of these challenges, it's all right to learn how to better parent. So, what you can do is, if you fall into one of the categories that I discussed, you can absolutely seek therapy for yourself. If you have been traumatized, you have been holding on to trauma for many, many years, and you are taking it out on other people, or you are showing your kids a cruel part of you because you've been hurt, you have to get some help for that. I always say the body can only do so much. It can only take so much. But your kids didn't ask to be here, and you certainly do not need to abuse them. So make sure you get some help for that. Don't abuse your children. Don't neglect your children. That's the law. That is different than spanking. And we can have a conversation about spanking all day long. Some people agree with it, some people don't. If you decide to spank your kids, you cannot beat them. Do not leave marks on them. Somebody like me will call the state on you. Period, point blank. It's the law. You cannot abuse or neglect your kids. If you are doing that, you need to get into psychotherapy. If you are an umbrella mom or a helicopter mom, make sure that you allow your kids to explore their environment. They can have a life without you. Now listen, time out. I met mothers like that, okay, where they are hovering over their kids like this. This is not a joke. There was one in particular, and I asked her, I said, why are you doing this to your kid? Because I'm very blunt with people and my clients. And she said, because I don't want anybody to hurt her. I was hurt. I don't want anybody to hurt her. So she's not going anywhere. Not allowing this kid to go with her father. Picture that, dads. You can't take your own kid out, right? In public. Not allowing the kid to go to school. This kid is only at home. Period. They have to have a life. Don't put your anxieties and your worries off on your kids. That's not fair. So I hear some parents going, I call my kids college every day. I stand outside in the bushes waiting on my kid to go to class every day. I Follow the school bus. I know I see your comments and your questions. I'll get right back. Just give me a minute. I see it. I go ahead and I follow the bus every day in the car to make sure my kid is safe. Like when I share these things with you guys, these are actually experiences that I've heard from parents. But listen, that's not fair to your kids. You know, what you are doing is creating mental health conditions in your kids. And I always say to all of you mothers, we are a child's umbilical cord to the world. We have the opportunity to make or break our kids. It is really easy to break them. And some of these behaviors will break them. Learn to manage them within yourself so that you don't give it off to your kids. That's what happened to you. Do you want to give that to your kids? You shouldn't want to. If you do, you have to stop it and get some help. Learn to manage aggressive behaviors. Please stop ignoring aggressive behaviors in your kids. There is training for kids with disabilities if they are behaving aggressive. Kids without disabilities that are out here just fighting you kids are cutting up in the streets, fighting, attacking other people. Girls fighting over boys fighting over territories. You all need help for all of this stuff. All of you. It is causing you to traumatize other people and traumatize yourself. Parents, if you ignore aggressive behaviors, they grow. Sometimes I don't even I will address aggressive behaviors in my own kids, but I also address it with other kids as well that are involved in the situation, because sometimes kids will be kids and things happen. But you cannot ignore this, because we have a duty and a responsibility to do what? To teach our kids. And that's what we need to do. We need to teach them how not to be aggressive, or how to handle aggressive situations, or how to communicate. It's as simple as that. Personally, I tell my kids every day, even my oldest child, who's all the way in law school, all you have to do is communicate sometimes. Instead of holding that anger and feeling as if you have to take it out on somebody else, is because you don't know what to do, especially a kid. Sometimes people just don't tell kids, hey, it's all right to talk to somebody. It's all right to go to the school counselor. It's okay to go to the principal. It's okay to go to someone and just tell them how you feel. You don't have to see the next person and rob them on a train or hit them in the face. So that is our job. Do not ignore those things. I tell you, one time my oldest daughter was a varsity basketball player. And there are times we have to tell our kids to defend themselves too. And there was a girl who was just completely mad at her because she kept, stealing the ball and making shots on her. And the little girl got mad and threw the basketball at my daughter. And my daughter was told, you don't have to take that. Okay. So there's a time and a place sometimes when we do have to tell them to defend themselves, and the whole team defended her. So they started doing some stuff with the basketball that only basketball players do, throwing a little bit more aggressive. So life happens. I get it. Those things happen. But I'm talking about what's outside of the box, right? There's always a kid at school, or a couple of them, who are extremely aggressive. Those are the kids that I'm referring to, and some parents just ignore those behaviors and they increase. They don't decrease if you ignore them, they increase. So we need to do something about it. Behavior, I'm a behaviorist. Behavior, as far as my theoretical orientation, is a learned behavior. Some parents are actually, let me talk about the mothers, not parents. Dads, I'll save you all for next week. Mothers sometimes contribute to aggressive behaviors because we are teaching it to our kids. We are. I see some of you going up to the schools and blaming the staff. For example, Girl gets into the fight. Here comes a mother attacking the school. What do you think reinforces that kid's behavior? Watching their mama do it. When I was little, that was something our parents never did. Our mothers, they didn't go up to the school blaming the teachers. They got our little butts for misbehaving at school. Ignoring aggressive behaviors increases them. Some of the things that you can do, or some of the type of therapy that you can seek for your child and yourself, is cognitive behavioral therapy. I recommend dialectical behavior therapy. DBT is what we call it, for more extremely aggressive behavior. Some of the kids that are in and out of incarceration and things like that. Applied behavior analysis works. We use that for autistic kids, but I'm going to tell you, or I should say children with autism, not autistic kids. I'm sorry, guys. ABA also works for other behaviors. So if you do have some thoughts about ABA in relation to how it would work with your child, I would suggest you look into it, because I believe that ABA works for other conditions. When your children do misbehave this way, I want you guys to try to remain as calm as you can, okay? Count to 10, take deep breaths, give yourself a time out. I used to do that a lot when my oldest was a teenager. I used to go, let me take a time out. Let me take a time out. Let me come back when I have my head together, because teenagers will try you that way. Another thing is the way that you shape behaviors when these kids are toddlers will contribute to negative behaviors in the future. When these kids tantrum on you all, for example, in the store, don't stop their tantrums by giving into it. Don't do that. You know what's going to happen next time you go to the store? Yep, they're going to tantrum again. And each time you go to the store, they're going to tantrum until you give them what they want. So who did they condition to do what they want to do? To see what they want have happen, if that makes sense. You're the one that's conditioned. They trained you in the store. So I see that a lot too with the toddlers. They're kicking and screaming, I want candy, I want a doll, I want this, I want that. And sometimes I just sit back and watch what the parent will do, just for, shits and giggles for myself, because I know what I do for a living. And sure enough, parents will give the kids what they want. They totally calm down, and I go, negative reinforcement in my head. It brings the parent relief, and it gives the child relief. Child stops screaming and gets what they want, and the parent does what? Stops the tantruming. But what you're doing is you're reinforcing negative behaviors with rewards, and that's not what you want to do. Okay, you want to do the total opposite. You want to leave the building. I can tell you personally, I've been through that a couple of times when my kids were toddlers, and I would just leave groceries, pack up, walk out the store, put them in the car, and go. I can tell you in Macy's, my oldest had a tantrum, and I put her in the middle of the floor where I could see her, and I kept shopping until she stopped. Then we implemented discipline. Someone commented and said, poor parenting is a direct result of the future behavior of children. That is absolutely correct. And it does not, again, start when they're adults. You want to make sure you're not teaching them that tantruming is acceptable, because it's not. Now, little kids, toddlers are going to tantrum anyway. That's a perfect time to change their behaviors when they're toddlers. It's the perfect time to teach them. What kind of behaviors are acceptable? What are your social rules? What are your social expectations? What are you willing to accept? What is the world going to accept? Little toddlers are so cute, and we like their little fat legs and stuff, but you're raising adults, people. You're raising adults. They have to be able to function in our society in the future. And if we don't teach them, they're not going to be able to do that. Okay, so keep that in mind. One of the things that I always do is compliment my kids. You can do rewards. Rewards do not always have to be tangible. They can be, I'm really proud of you. My son did something really well yesterday, and I was like, that's what's up. You know, you want to this do he automatically did a fist bump. I thought, okay, good. I did this right, because he didn't need, something like money, or he didn't need, you know, any type of what we call primary, reinforcers, or something that was really big. You do things in society because you're supposed to do them. So he didn't even ask, "Where's my reward?" or anything that like that. I said, "You got this. You did this right," with him, so that he just wanted a fist bump after I told him, "That's what's up. You did a good job. That makes mommy really happy for you." So they could be small, they can be large. For me personally, large rewards come in grades. You make good grades, pick out what you want for dinner. I remember, you wash my car. Now you can drive it. It just depends, but not all the time. You behave because you're supposed to. And that's the attitude you have with these kids. You can also, with these little ones, help them identify their emotions. So while you are being an umbrella mom, I'm just joking. Don't do that. When they're stuck in the basement, use art. Use art. Help them identify their emotions. Have them draw you pictures. That's something that I do, so they can show you their facial expressions. Just to go back in my original blog, when the kids would tell me that they would see ghosts, for example, what I would do is I would have them draw it out when they couldn't actually tell me what they saw. They would say, "Oh, we saw an angel, and I know it was God's angel, and I know it was this, and I know it was that." And I would go, "Okay, well, just draw it out, because I've never seen it, so I don't know what you're talking about." And they would do that. Pictures help, because then when they draw pictures of their angry faces, or if they threw a punch at someone, or if they draw you a chart of what happened, then you can actually process it. That is a really good skill that you can absolutely use to bring them down off of aggressive behavior. So we definitely have a lot more to talk about with this. We're going to also talk about part 2 next week with the fathers. Most importantly, I want you all to realize what kind of triggers that your kids have, because what we do in school, this is something I didn't put in the blog, but sometimes when we have really aggressive kids in school, we will get somebody happy about talking about the dads. I'm getting to you all next week, guys. We gotta love our dads too. What we do in the schools is we'll do, with parental permission, a functional behavior analysis, or we'll do a behavior intervention plan. So we call it FBA and a BIP, a BIP, right? And the way that the reason you do that is because you want to understand what is functioning that causes what causes the behavior. So the functioning of the behavior, what maintains the behavior, and also what kind of interventions we're going to do in order to decrease those behaviors. So what I did was I created a journal for parents to help you all keep track of it. And I was just looking for it behind me real quick, but I don't see it fast enough. But it's on my website, and it's also on Amazon. And the reason I did that is because parents aren't advocating, or they don't know how to always advocate for their kids. So what I decided to do is create a real quick journal for you all, so that you can use it if you want to, and I hope you do, to help keep track of some of these behaviors that you are seeing within your kids. So it's time for a parenting journal. And I actually really like that one, because I know, as a school psychologist, part of me, that parental tracking is very important. Then you take your data and you take it to your school special education team or your general ed teachers, and you tell them what you know about your kid, because you all are actually the experts in your child's behavior, not the school. You all are. So don't get that twisted. You are the experts. These are your kids, and we rely on you all, which is why you need to have the data ready. So I hope that gives you a perspective of how mothers overall can contribute to more aggressive behaviors that may lead some, I hope not. I don't want you all to do that. There's help out there, but cause some mothers to ask me, am I raising a serial killer? I mean, what is this? My kid is aggressive. Am I raising one? I never tell them yes, guys. To be honest with you, I never tell them yes, but I will say sometimes I'm going, oh my God, I can totally see this kid harming someone if she doesn't do something about it. Now, let me see what comments I have here. Okay. Most of the women I have been with have been enablers. I'm sorry to laugh, but that was funny. They think they are showing love and protecting them. Absolutely. That's what I was talking about. You know, let's see, how do we phrase this? There's a difference between um, being protective. We're all going to be protective of our babies. They are our babies, men and women, but it's how you do it. You have to, let me break this down differently. You all didn't want your parents hovering over you, right? Most of you are going to say, that's correct. That's correct. That's correct. I didn't want my parents hovering over me. Okay, so what you're doing is the same behavior that was done to you. Protect them. Love them. I think we all should love one another. I say that all the time. We don't love each other enough. Love those babies, protect them, but let them go live their lives. God knows I didn't want my kid to go all the way across the country from me to finish her education, but I had to let her do it. She has to live her life. It's her life. I understand. Poor parenting is a direct result of future behavior. Absolutely. It's politically incorrect to speak on the issue of parenting because you will be accused of parent shaming. Well, I better shut up if that's the case. I'm a parent too. I'm also a psychologist, and we need to talk about parenting because parenting is how you do it, right? We don't shame our parents, we shape them. It's different. Right? So I would never shame parents just because I am a parent and I care. So I would never shame parents. But what I do is I can train and I can help to shape parents so that some of the behaviors that we are seeing, such as the 3 that I talked about today, can decrease. A lot of this is trauma, women having their own trauma. Trauma, I think, is like an umbrella term. And if you think about an umbrella, trauma would be at the top, and under each spoke would be how it impacts us, including me. And so, in those spokes in the umbrella, you have sadness, you have anger, you have hostility, you have worry behaviors. Under the next spoke, you might have harming other people. And it goes back to what? Trauma. Trauma. So we don't want to shame parents. We definitely want to make our parents feel love, but structure with regard to their kids. Why don't you come to Columbus, Ohio and campaign for the superintendent of school? The funny part is that I was raised in Ohio, but I don't have the credentials to be a superintendent. But hey, I love that you said that. Love shouldn't be hazardous. Absolutely. We all need to love more. So I have to tell you all, thank you so much for caring enough to listen to this podcast. It means a lot to me. Next week, we are going to go straight into part 2, which is all about, am I raising a serial killer? And we are going to talk about, next week is teens. But you know what? Because I said fathers, you know what we're going to do? We're going to skip and we're going to talk about fathers next week because I've been pumping up the fathers. So we're going to switch it around a little bit. We're going to talk about the fathers next week. Then we're going to go back to teenagers. And then what I'm going to do on Friday is I'm going to write a different kind of blog. You know, have you ever been in the store and you kind of wonder, why is this person so mad, right? Why is this person so mad? I might get some kickback from this blog on Friday, but I'm going to talk about it because I noticed that there are so many people angry. I was at Sam's Club this weekend and there was a woman, an African-American woman, who just mean mugged me. And I started thinking, I'm going to talk about it. And it's going to be called, Why You So Mad? Why are you so mad? Everybody's just mad, not smiling, just frowning. So I'm going to talk about that this Friday. Next week, probably next week, I am going to release another blog on Psychology Today. I'm not even sure what that's going to be yet, but I'm going to release it next week. All right, so thank you so much for joining me. I want you all to have a wonderful evening and a great weekend. We will talk next week. Thank you so much. It's a lot of people joining me today. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. Have a good night.